Hello everyone. This is the 41st part of the story, Mārvēl Unlimited Skills, I Can Download. Chapter 245. In the living room, looking at Wolverine and Bruce who was holding Wanda in arm, Hank and Professor X looked at each other, and didn't say anything. For a few minutes, the owner of the house, Charles, broke the silence eventually. He first looked at Wolverine and asked politely, "Who are you? What's your intentions?" Bang! The Wolverine banged on the table with his hand. The movement was extremely like the mafia boss in movies. "Mr. Charles, I'm Logan and others also called me Wolverine. Don't waste time. You will know everything after you touch my head with your hands." But, just when Charles was ready to say something, Hank stopped him and replaced him to answer. "He has injected himself with the medicine that is used to inhibit my shape-shifting, so he can't use his super ability at present." The Wolverine with an unspeakable expression stared at Hank. Damn it, it's this guy heading Professor X to this no-return road that is injecting the drug. So he despondently lied down on the sofa, said, "I will wait until the efficacy of the medication disappeared." Seeing the Wolverine no longer spoke as if he was lost in thought, Charles turned to look at Bruce, then, "What about you, sir?" The naughty little Wanda readied to forestall, but Bruce immediately covered her mouth. "Sir, my daughter passed out before and she suddenly got the super ability after waking. I heard you build a school to enlighten such kids, so I want." Little Wanda still wanted to interpose their chat and struggled in Bruce's arms. "Oh, what ability did your daughter get?" Charles suddenly took an interest. The Wolverine also stood up from the sofa when hearing them talking. He looked at Bruce and Wanda in surprise and thought secretly, was he lost any important memories? Why didn't he remember these two people at all? Hearing Charles wanted to see her super ability, little Wanda immediately got rid from Bruce's arms. A crimson energy ball suddenly appeared in her little hands. It controlled a book flying in the air. But soon after, Wanda was distracted and the book fell on the ground. Hank was gape-mouthed looking at little Wanda. This girl was too powerful than him when he was at the same age. The Wolverine suddenly stood up. He stared at little Wanda motionlessly. Was she Jean, who was in childhood? Charisse with a gentle smile looked at the book that fell in front of him. But, when thinking back his own super ability, Charles immediately fell in great pain. Because, it would make him remember those large, heterogeneous, chaos messages of those objects he checked. They shattered his consciousness endlessly. Now, he was still a young man and hadn't the enough stronger willpower to deal with the impact of those messages and voices that shattered his mind. That's why he let Hank inject the drugs that inhibited his super ability. In this way, he needed no longer to face those voices that made him great agony. After that, he escaped and numbed himself with alcohol. Until the moment he saw Wanda, he suddenly seemed to have found his future path. Seeing the change of the expression on the young Professor X, Bruce realized that the Wolverine needed no longer to persuade Professor X to stop the drugs because little Wanda had already helped him to fix Professor X. The moment, Bruce suddenly activated the high-speed movement and touched Professor X lightly. Name, Charles Francis Xavier. Identity, Professor X, Level 4 Mutant. Ability, Telepathy, 100W, Mind Control, 100W. Equipment, Cerebro, a brain wave amplifier, 50W. Professor X had only 2 abilities, but going by the energy values, it could infer how powerful Professor X was. These 2 abilities were not simple, each of them owned a unique ability. Telepathy could detect people's mind. Besides, it also could search their memories and distinguish whether they were mutants or ordinary humans. Rely on this ability, Professor X even could link his mind to any mutant and human with the help of the Cerebro. The mind control was even more powerful. Not only could it reverse people's thoughts to control them, but also it was able to selectively make them lose their memories or restore some memories they had forgotten. Besides, the mind control could create a spirit cage. The Phoenix's evil personality was sealed in this way by Professor X in the original plot. As long as Professor X wanted, he could even use the Cerebro to link the opponent's mind first, then directly controlled this object with the mind control in a long range. However, Professor X was a kind person. he would never detect others' thoughts without their consent, no mention controlling their mind voluntarily. Unfortunately, though he didn't want so, it didn't mean that some negative roles were the same. This was the reason why there were always some evil people who wanted to control him to realize their evil purpose. Bruce only had 1 million energy values at present, or else, he would absolutely download all of them this time. After a careful consideration, Bruce decided to download the mind control first. Beep. Mind control requires 1 million energy values. Are you sure to download now? Yes. Beep. Download successfully. Congratulations to the host for getting the abilities of the mind control. When the moment of downloading the mind control, Bruce automatically became a level 4 mutant. After trying to use the god's telekinesis to link little Wanda's brain, Bruce happily found that even if without the ability of the telepathy of Professor X, he was also able to link others' brains using the god's telekinesis, and it had the same effect with Professor X's telepathy. Linking to others' brains meant that he was naturally able to use mind control. Since this moment, he also possessed the same ability as Professor X. What's more, he learned how to restore others' memories that had been forgotten. It's really an extra surprise packet. Besides, his god's telekinesis also passively learnt the ability to search memories. If I couldn't search for memories, how would I restore them? So, just by 1 million energy values, Bruce owned all of Professor X's abilities. It needed 2 million energy values before that. After all, the god telekinesis's level was higher than the telepathy. If going by the level of the ability of the mutants to classify, the god's telekinesis should be at level 5 in mutants' abilities. After getting the new ability, Bruce immediately tried to restore Wanda's memory. But in the end, Bruce dispiritedly found a fact. The time gem was not only bringing Wanda's body back to the past, but also including her memories. However, I also entered that energy when transferring. Why didn't the time gem backtrack me? Bruce blinked at little Wanda. Perhaps, the answer was in Wanda's abilities. Thinking of this, Bruce checked little Wanda's status. Chapter 246. Name, Wanda Django Maximoff. Identity, Scarlet Witch, Level 5 Mutant. Ability, Alter Reality, Unable to Load, Origin Magic Power, 500,000 energy values, Magic Ball, 30,000 energy values, Magic Flying, 10,000 energy values. Item, the Grimoire of Space Teleports, 100,000 energy values. Seeing Wanda's stats, Bruce was momentarily stunned. Wanda automatically turned into a level 5 mutant after coming to the X-Men multiverse. This point Bruce could understand. And obviously the magic book was from Doctor Strange. But what the hell was the ability of the Alter Reality? And even the system was unable to load. Before that, Bruce had only seen this message on the Infinity Gem. It seemed that the reason why Wanda became such a state was just because of this ability of the Alter Reality. At the moment, Bruce reconsidered very carefully. Suddenly, he realized that the new ability of the Alter Reality on Wanda was very likely to involve the Chaos Energy. After all, Wanda was extremely similar to the Phoenix, Jean. They were born with such supreme cosmic energy. Both Wanda's Chaos Energy and Jean's Phoenix Force all involved the ultimate laws of the universe. Maybe it was because Wanda was too worried about him, she activated this ultimate ability unintentionally. It's very likely. Then, what exactly was this Alter Reality ability? For example, the members of the Guardians of Galaxy had been turned into various weird creatures in Sakaar by Collector using the Reality Gem, but they immediately regressed after the Reality Gem was taken away for a few time. Similarly, the universe would correct the time disorder itself in just a few moments if the time gem hadn't a continuous energy output. Bruce knew this point very well because he had many experiences to use the time gem. Such as, if you use the time gem to accelerate time and let a teenager in front of you become an old man who was with silver hair. As long as the time gem was taken away, the old man would immediately regress a teenager again. After all, if you didn't really control these two laws of the universe, reality and time, you could only change it temporarily, not forever. But if anyone was affected by Wanda's Alter Reality, they would change forever. This was the fearing power of the Alter Reality. In the original plot of the mutant world, Wanda in extreme rage had let 98% mutants lose their super abilities. This was a case that used the chaos energy to alter reality. Now it seemed, the reason why Bruce came to the X-Men world was just because Wanda accidentally activated the ability of the alter reality when she tried to teleport herself to Asgard but found she hadn't enough energy to support. Then she was stuck in the teleport space by herself. At this moment Doctor Strange arrived and ready to save her using the time gem. However, it caused the teleportation backtracking continually until Bruce came to break this case. Combine all the complicated factors, it caused a reality that Bruce brought the 12-year-old Wanda to the X-Men world. Eventually, Bruce understood all of the cause and effect. So, whether he wanted to come back to the Avengers universe or recovered Wanda all seemed impossible for the time being. After all, if Bruce wanted to do this himself, he had to enhance his strength to the multiverse level first. Therefore, what Bruce could do now was to finish the tasks in the X-Men world and try if there was another way after saving some energy values. After Bruce held little Wanda sitting on the sofa for a while, the medicine effect on Professor X had diminished and his legs also regressed to disability status. Bruce secretly checked Professor X's body with the god's telekinesis and found his spine was injured by someone using a crashing object from the back. It seriously damaged his spine and led to his lower limb paralysis. Now, Bruce was able to recover Professor X's injury as long as he wanted, because he was still the death god on Earth. No matter which universe he went to, this point won't change. Even if one of the 5 entities that were born with the beginning of the universe, the death, was also unable to change it, because it's the system confirmed. Due to this, Bruce could sense, there was a death energy enwinded on Professor X's spine. Now, he only needed to touch Professor X, then he was able to eliminate those death energy and made Professor X recover. But Bruce didn't intend to do it at present, because he didn't want to expose his ability about the death god for the time being. Moreover, whether Professor X could walk or not, it won't affect him to cast his abilities at all. The paralysis of the lower limbs, instead, stimulated him to face the difficulties of life more strongly. Due to these experiences, Professor X acquired enough spirit power to guide these young mutants, no matter how difficult they were to deal with. As a genius, Professor X had once graduated from the famous university, Harvard, at 16-year-old. Besides, he acquired 3 doctorates including psychology. For him, the most important was always his brain and wisdom. "Logan, are you ready?" After sitting down in his wheelchair again, Charles started the Wolverine who squatted in front of him to ask. "Yes, don't waste time, hurry up." The Wolverine's eyes became serious. Charles gently put his hand on the Wolverine's head. Suddenly, the Wolverine's memories and experiences from when he was a child poured into Charles's mind as if experiencing it personally. After checking the part of the Wolverine's memories, Charles stared at the Wolverine and said, "You are a poor man." Charles could feel, when the Wolverine extended the adamantium paw every time, the movement looked very cool from the surface, but this process was very painful in fact. The feeling just like that a steel needle pierced the bone. Just take an image, it's also very horrible. However, this kind of pain was just pieces of cake in Wolverine's miserable life. Yes, after experiencing many worse tortures on the body, this was just pieces of cakes. Though those pieces of cakes were unbearable pain for normal people. This was the first time that Charles realized how powerful the Wolverine's inside was. Whereafter, Charles experienced the Weapon X project, witnessing Stryker carried out inhuman experiments on Wolverine and the Wolverine's later painful experience. Until Charles saw his old self who looked at him sitting on the wheelchair, the eyes filled with hope and goodness. Finally, across the boundaries of time and space, the young Charles got a chance to take a talk with his future old self. After the conversation, Charles was no longer vast and hazy for his life. From this moment, Charles found ego and firmed his future path. It was the same as that year, he gave up his love with a human and came back to the mutant side. After exiting from Wolverine's memories, Charles opened his eyes and put down the hand on Wolverine's head. He already knew what he should do. Chapter 247. After checking Wolverine's memory, Charles took a rest first. Later, with Bruce's permission, Charles linked to his mind. In the memory space, Charles saw a lot of trivial things about Bruce and Wanda. At the same time, he learned that Bruce was also a powerful mutant and his abilities were to summon various fire creatures and move objects using spirit power. Charles realized that Bruce was also a powerful level 4 mutant as same as Magneto and himself. This made him very happy, because he didn't see the negative characters in Bruce's thoughts, that's meaning Bruce would be a very powerful helper to him. Through checking Bruce's memory, Charles completely trusted Bruce now, then he nodded at Bruce. He had already treated Bruce as the same level as him. Knowing Charles had trusted him, Bruce put down his 2 fingers by the side of his head and retracted his god telekinesis at the same time. Obviously, the memory Charles saw was deliberately fabricated by Bruce through creating an illusion. Because Bruce knew that would definitely be a big trouble if Charles saw his real memory. In order to avoid unnecessary trouble, Bruce fabricated this memory illusion, which made Charles think what he saw was the real. After all, Bruce's current mental power had already reached the level 5 of the mutant and it infinitely closed to the legendary level 6. So Charles couldn't see through this illusion Bruce created, let alone thinking that the power Bruce owned would be far more than his image. Beep. Detecting the task that followed the Wolverine to find Professor X and guiding Professor X to reverse the future had been finished, rewarding 300,000 energy values. Beep. The next task, rescuing the Magneto and finding the Mystique, avoiding them to be killed. The moment of hearing the messages from the system, Bruce understood if it's not because he hid his identity, this task won't be finished so easy, no matter how Charles trusted him. Because Bruce owned the power that could destroy the Earth and his threatening level was even higher than the Sentinels that had extinguished the mutants in the original plot. After confirming Wolverine and Bruce's identities, Charles whispered to Hank for a while. Hank quickly nodded and he believed Charles's decision because he knew his ability clearly. From now on, he just understood that the Wolverine hadn't neuropathy, so he showed a slightly apologetic expression to the Wolverine. After that, Hank pushed Charles in the wheelchair and headed them to go to Charles's laboratory to visit the Cerebro. Every government department on Earth wanted to get Charles and the Cerebro, because these two could make the mutants on Earth no place to hide. And no matter what powerful mutants would be located soon if Charles wanted to search them specially using the Cerebro. At this moment, countless figures appeared around them. Although Bruce had once seen this scene in the movie, he just realized what a great lure Charles faced was after Bruce experienced it personally. It could be said that every mutant's life was held in Charles's hands after he used the Cerebro. But Charles didn't abuse this godlike right at will. Such a person deserved to play a leading role in X-Men world just like Doctor Strange in Avengers world if he didn't be killed by Jean in the future. At this moment, Bruce suddenly became interested in what would happen if Charles learned how to use magic. After learning magic, would Professor X use the magic power to treat his physical disabilities well just like Doc Strange? At first, Doc Strange was a surgeon, but because of a car accident, his hands became handicapped. Naturally, he disabled to operate, it's the reason why he tried every way to remedy his hands. Until Doctor Strange found a fact that as a magician would save more people's life than a doctor, then he gave up his past career and switched to the magician's profession. Studying magic to protect the Earth didn't conflict with Professor X's concept of maintaining peace. In silence, everyone watched the process of how Professor X searched the Magneto with the Cerebro. At this time, Bruce had secretly made a plan for strengthening Professor X. Found him, Eric is locked in the Pentagon. Charles enlarged the projection and everyone saw Magneto's real appearance. The Wolverine immediately readied to act after confirming it's indeed the Magneto. Unexpectedly, Charles grabbed him at the same time as if he had already known the Wolverine would have such a response. Logan, I know you can defeat the Pentagon alone with your strength, but I know a way that could solve this matter easier, let's go to a friend first. If it's anyone else stopping him, the Wolverine would still persevere in his idea. But it's Charles, so he had to obey him. Because the most respected person in his heart was Charles, he knew how much Charles had done for mutants. In fact, Bruce immediately knew who this friend was, it's the Quicksilver, but the Quicksilver here was different from the Quicksilver in Avengers world. In other words, this Quicksilver here was not the same person with the Quicksilver in Avengers World. Because of curiosity, Bruce decided to follow them to go to this Quicksilver. Outside the house of the Quicksilver. The Quicksilver had run around them for many times using his super speed before they got out of the car. Because his speed was too fast and even reached 80 kilometers per hour, no one sensed him besides Bruce. First, the Quicksilver glanced at Charles, then he came to Hank's side and rummaged his calling card out to check. After confirming Hank's identity, he walked up to Bruce. However, just when he readied to rummage the black suit pocket of Bruce, who was unstationary, suddenly grabbed his hand. Quicksilver's pupils immediately dilated behind the goggles. Under the high-speed movement, everyone in Quicksilver's eyes was motionless. Just when others were motionless, Bruce, who was also motionless at first, suddenly moved. To Quicksilver, how horrifying this moment was. He had never seen a case where a person could respond under his super speed. Bruce with a cold eyes gazed at him fixedly, then released him quickly. The Quicksilver didn't dare to act again. He hurried back to the game machine in his house to pretend playing the game. In fact, his collar had already been soaked by the cold sweat and he was thinking whether to run away immediately. But on second thought, he felt that this person shouldn't have hostility since he released him just now. Additionally, there was Charles, so the Quicksilver decided to stay here and ready to trim the sails at any time. "Hi, my old friend, we meet again." At the moment, Charles had arrived in front of him and smiled to greet Quicksilver, who dressed like a bad boy. Chapter 248. Bruce, holding little Wanda, stood behind the Wolverine. The Quicksilver always peeked at Bruce from time to time, but no one found this detail. After they finalized the plan that saved Magneto, Bruce let Wanda stay outside of the Pentagon to watch a busking. After all, it's inappropriate to involve a child in assaulting the Pentagon. Soon, the 5 people had secretly sneaked into the building. On the way, these guards who wanted to interrogate them were all controlled by Charles, and then they lost the memory about this part completely. The moment when entering the Pentagon, this action had started already. Hank firstly sneaked into the crowd and pushed a button of the equipment he brought in that was with an antenna. Instantly, the Pentagon's surveillance system was completely down. At first, Hank was a scientist and had developed a series of high-tech equipment for X-Men in the original plots. He was even able to make the invisible plane. So making a small device to disrupt the Pentagon's surveillance system was incredibly simple to him. Next, Charles and Wolverine decided to seal the perimeter's guards. As for rescuing the Magneto would be carried out by Quicksilver and Bruce. After Charles and Wolverine left, Bruce noticed that Quicksilver was looking at him. "What's up? Are you surprised I can catch you?" asked Bruce, then he quickly pulled down Quicksilver's goggle. The reason why Bruce pulled down Quicksilver's goggle was because he knew that the Quicksilver had to wear a goggle before he used his super ability, otherwise, his eyes would be injured by the wind because of the high-speed movement. When Quicksilver put on his goggles again, he found Bruce had disappeared. This only meant that Bruce was faster than him, otherwise, he could absolutely capture Bruce's movement relying on the quick reflex he developed in countless fights. Whereafter, the Quicksilver immediately activated the high-speed movement and kept his pace up. On the way, he found that all the guards had been hit down on the ground by Bruce. And as soon as he saw the special jail that was locking Magneto, Bruce had come out with the Magneto from it. During the time of interchanging Magneto, Bruce had got Magneto's information. Name: Eric Lencher. Identity: Magneto, Level 4 Mutant. Ability: Controlling Magnetic Field, 120W. Item: Magneto's Helmet, a Mental Protective Helmet, 50W. Although Magneto only owned one ability, it's already enough for him, because only this one ability had made him become a planet-level being. Mentioned to the destructive power, this ability was far stronger than any other level 4 mutant. Besides, the controlling magnetic field was not only able to control the steel, but also it could charge for those devices that needed electricity using the electromagnetic induction. What's more, the Magneto could directly control the Earth's magnetic field and reverse it to cause the disaster of destroying the Earth. But now the Magneto hadn't realized he owned such a great ability, otherwise, he could directly set a magnetic shield to ensure that no mutants were able to hurt him when every time he met fight, and then the home court would be led by him and he could fool the enemies to death. Who are you? The young Magneto looked at Bruce and asked in surprise. He found that he did not know Bruce at all, nor understood why would Bruce save him. I'm Charles's friend, he asked me to save you. Bruce's words answered Magneto's confusion. When hearing the name of Charles, Magneto nodded lightly and later walked out following Bruce. The moment of seeing the Magneto, Quicksilver pretended to turn his head away. But Bruce knew he was secretly peeping Magneto with the corner of his eyes in fact. After all, the Magneto was Quicksilver's father, but Quicksilver was just unwilling to admit him. Before that, the Magneto broke with Quicksilver's mother before the Quicksilver was born. And the only wrong was Magneto's identity, and Quicksilver's mother was scared away after she knew he was a mutant. In fact, the Magneto had also never expected that Quicksilver's mother would get pregnant that night, let alone she gave birth to Quicksilver and Wanda. Until today, Quicksilver just saw his biological father for the first time. From a kid to a man, he grew up with his mother in a single-parent family. This was also the real reason why he came to the Pentagon following Charles and Wolverine. He just wanted to see what his biological father looked like. After that, Bruce walked behind these two and didn't intend to intervene in their emotional world. Soon, they met with Charles. The moment of seeing Magneto, Charles immediately scolded loudly, "Eric, you're a son of a bitch. You only know to stir up the war between humans and mutants." And the Magneto also unkindly scolded back immediately, "When the mutants are suffering from the hardships, where are you, Charles?" Charles's tongue immediately tied and twisted. "After all, it's the truth," Magneto said. No one could reverse what had happened, it's affecting the current Professor X at least, so he walked away and no longer spoke. Next, the Wolverine explained to Magneto why rescuing him. Is it really? Will the future be so bad? In fact, the Magneto had decided to join Charles's team to rescue Mystique at this moment. What he asked was just because of surprise, and he won't doubt the facticity of what the Wolverine said. Whereafter, they had boarded the plane to Paris. On the other side, in a negotiation room, Trask was vigorously introducing his sentinels to some politicians. However, most of the politicians didn't believe Trask's words and thought he was just creating a public panic, because the mutants' threat theory was still not mainstream at present. The Mystique calmly looked at Trask, who was in front of her. Before that, she got a message that Trask was developing a robot which would pose a serious threat to mutants. So Raven killed one of the politicians who should be here today, then she shifted into this politician's shape and sneaked into this room. Now she was waiting for a good opportunity to assassinate Trask. The key node to reverse the future plots was here. In the original plot, the Mystique failed and was caught by Trask to lead a bad situation where Trask extracted her DNA and developed the upgraded Sentinels successfully. Next, it's the process where Trask displayed the function of locating mutants, but the alarm went off at this moment. There are mutants here. Trask's height was originally shorter than ordinary people. He immediately hid under the table, and the present guards also took out their pistols nervously. The moment, Raven also realized she was exposed and was going to fight head-on. However, she suddenly found a helpless case that she was unable to take any movement, and even moving a finger was also impossible. She was trammeled in place by an invisible giant energy. Bang! At this moment, the Magneto kicked open the door and Bruce was following behind him. Chapter 249. It's you, Magneto. When Trask saw that the Comer was the famous Magneto, he immediately ran away with fear. As for Magneto, he didn't stop him because he didn't know Trask at all. Raven gritted her teeth with anxiety. Obviously, this wasn't the result she wanted. However, there's nothing she could do because the energy that trammeled her was too powerful. After tackling those guards, Charles and Wolverine also arrived at this moment. Just when everyone thought this action was completely successful, the Magneto suddenly shot towards the Mystique with a pistol. You are a threat to us, I have to kill you, sorry. Magneto had always been such a decisive and pitiless character. In fact, he had decided to kill the Mystique since the moment of joining Charles's team. Hank had been watching the Magneto before. although he gave him a sharp push in time, the bullet still shot out, because the Magneto controlled the pistol using his super ability. At this moment, Bruce deeply realized a truth that the things would still go on in its original way if there weren't some great power to affect it. Such as, even if the Wolverine had come back from the future, the Mystique would still be injured by Magneto, Trask would still get her blood and Mystique's significance would still expose to the human's eyes, these points won't change. Obviously, now the so-called great power was Bruce. Since Bruce was here now, the original plots won't happen. Instantly, the bullet Magneto shot was fixed in the air by Bruce's god's telekinesis. Even though the Magneto had tried his best to activate his super ability, the bullet was still not obedient and continued to stay in place. The Magneto freezed. Was there any mutant owned such a great power that could match with him? Weren't the known level 4 mutants only him and Charles? And Charles hadn't such an ability that controlled things using spiritual strength. Who is this one? Just when the Magneto fell in great confusion, Charles looked at Bruce and cast him a telepathic message, "Perfect, Bruce." Then Charles walked to the Mystique and with affectionate eyes looked at her, "Raven, stop it. This kind of action will pull yourself in danger." Bruce knew about their relationship very well. Charles had adopted Mystique since she was a little girl, but Mystique didn't accept Charles's concept. In her mind, she always thought that Charles couldn't understand her misery because he was born in a rich family. In fact, she was more sentient with Magneto's concept, although he almost killed her just now. So, she chose to escape Charles. But all of this had nothing with Bruce. After knocking Magneto unconscious to the ground, Bruce withdrew his super ability on the bullet. Pat! The uncontrolled bullet fell on the ground. With terror, Bruce secretly set a god's telekinesis on Mystique's body to ensure he could locate her at any time, then Bruce left bringing the Magneto. As for Charles and Mystique, let them slowly enjoy their emotional world. What Bruce needed to do was just to ensure their safety. About Charles, the only thing Bruce felt annoyed was that Charles could obviously solve Mystique using his super ability, but he preferred to solve it with his mouth. The moment of Bruce just left the room, the system's voice immediately sounded, "Beep. Congratulations to the host, you have finished the task of saving Magneto and finding Mystique, rewarding 50W energy values. The next task, reversing the extinct future of the mutants." After listening to Charles's verbose homily in half an hour, the Mystique found she could finally move. "Charles, don't say any more, please. Anyway, I won't stop my action." After that, the Mystique had disappeared with a few leaps. "I won't give up. This time, I can't convince you. The next time, I will." Just when Charles muttered to himself, Wolverine suddenly appeared in front of him and Hank at this moment. "Who are you? Why am I here?" The Wolverine asked lightly and his eyes were with a strange light. Charles got close to him and patted Wolverine's forehead a few times. "Logan, are you on drugs? Hallucinogen or something else?" Hank saw Wolverine's unstable state and wanted to bring him under control first because worrying about Charles's safety. Charles stopped him calmly. "Don't worry, Hank. Leave him to me." On the other side, Bruce removed Magneto's helmet and linked his mind using the god's telekinesis. First, he deleted Magneto's idea about assassinating the human's president, then he reinvented Magneto's mindset, let Magneto return to the human's world and start a new family again. Then, Bruce found Mystique again and did the same thing after knocking her unconscious. It had to be said that mind control was really a convenient ability. After waking up, both of the Magneto and Mystique followed Bruce's instructions. On the other side, the negotiation room. Charles was going to continue to persuade the Wolverine, but the Wolverine suddenly disappeared in place. "Hey, Logan." Charles stretched his hand to check the place where the Wolverine stood just now, but there was nothing at this moment. When Bruce was about to enter the negotiation room again, the system's voice sounded. "Beep. Congratulations to the host to finish the task of reversing the future, reward 50W energy values." Looking at the 1.38 million energy values, Bruce found these energy values were gotten so easily this time. Now, he could download Magneto's ability. But on second thought, Bruce had given up this idea for the time being. He planned to make the decision after finding Jean. After all, Jean owned the Phoenix Force. This was one of the ultimate powers in the universe. And Bruce couldn't anticipate how many energy values Jean's ability required, so these energy values he best didn't waste them at will. After going back to Charles's house, all of them gathered together and discussed establishing school. "Bruce, have you ever been a teacher?" asked Charles. "Teacher?" Bruce thought for a while. "Yes, I have. I have been a PE teacher." He remembered that in the Avengers world, for Spider-Man's task, he had indeed been arranged as a PE teacher by the S.H.I.E.L.D. So, he indeed had a few experiences in this sphere. "Well, then you'll be the PE teacher," Charles happily said, and then he turned to look at Hank. "Charles, I'd like to be a physics teacher," Hank said voluntarily. In the end, Charles was the headmaster and founder of the Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. After announcing this news to the humans' world, it caused a great influence. And those mutants stampeded to send their children here who had been treated as an alien in the humans' world. Next, Iceman, Shadowcat and others should appear one by one, Bruce thought secretly. Among them, the most Bruce wanted to see was the Phoenix. This marks the end of part 41 of the story Mārvēl Unlimited Skills. I can download. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.